Well, hi everyone. It's Nadeem from Colin Campbell Chemicals here again at GIS. This is day two of the education conference, and I'm lucky enough to catch up with a good old friend, Dr. Jim Brosnan from the University of Tennessee. Some of you guys may be watching this saw my interview with Jim last year, and I thought, well, why not catch up with him again? He's in a very, very good mood after the Patriots won the Super Bowl. I was waiting for the shirt this time, but no shirt.
Still in the suitcase.
But I thought I'd talk with Jim in regards to some of the work he's been doing with weeds, with POA and the likes like that, and answer and I guess try to get an idea about cruise control. I know a lot of you guys watching here in Australia are going to be asking me that. Well, actually, already asked me that question, so I'm going to try to get some type of help, should I say, because there's no real answer for it. Jim, welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to see you as always. I know it's a long trip for you to come to this show all the way from Australia, so thank you for being and thank you for the invitation to come back and speak. I think last time we talked a lot about resistance and resistant weeds, and that certainly is continuing to be an issue, here. Definitely POA problems for sure, goosegrass problems for sure. More chatter now about resistance in the sedges. I know my colleague, Dr. Patrick McCullough at Georgia, is working with ALS-resistant sedges, so that's certainly going to be a challenge moving forward. And I think probably what's changed between last time and this time when we spoke is there's just more of us looking for it now. I think anyone who works in weed science and turfgrass is certainly aware of the issue and has come across it, especially if you work in extension settings here directly with superintendents. You're certainly going to see resistance as something that's on the radar. And we've had more diagnostic centers start. So Tennessee started a diagnostic center a couple years ago to address the resistance issue. I know that Auburn has since started one and Georgia has started one, and that's awesome because the more tools we have available to help you all managing turfgrass with this issue, the better off the industry is going to be. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do this for, is to help the turfgrass manager.
No, and one of the things that a lot of turf managers don't realize is how big weed resistance is an issue. Like we know in agriculture it's a big issue, but it is the biggest issue facing food crops. We're seeing more resistance. Like I always talk about fungicide resistance, but we've only got very little documentation there. But in terms of weed resistance, we've already got documented weed resistance for POA against
almost every mode of action.
Mode of action there. And University of Adelaide, Peter Patel has been doing quite a bit of work there, but that's one person doing some work, and that. So we take a lot from the US. It's like, what's happening here? We can. Can we replicate in Australia to help with the management practices? And it's interesting you talk about the sedges as well, because we are seeing, I'm hearing there's a lot of issues with resistance with the sedges, especially with the ALS and ALS herbicide, especially to one of the main products used is halosulfur on the old Sempra product. Obviously the other ALS inhibitors do it, but we're starting to see that because I think just there's been it's been very effective. But it's just so cheap that people just now put in the spray tank.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the first case of resistance that I know of in the U.S. was in rice, but it was with halosulfuron. I believe the Georgia case is with annual sedge, so not yellow nut sedge, Cyperus escalensis, but just a different species within that same genre. And we're bound to see more, right? Because we don't have new modes of action coming. One of the things about shows like GIS is that we come here and we see new products, but in almost all of those cases, those are products of existing modes of action that are either put together in a new combination or a novel way to widen the spectrum of an application and do something unique for a turf manager. And it's one of the reasons why when we do have something that's truly new and novel, there's a lot of interest. POA cure is something that's been in the U.S. research community for several years now, and there's definitely a lot of excitement about that. One, because it selectively removes POA annua from creeping bentgrass putting greens, but two, it's a novel mode of action that we don't really have anything else like it. And I know from a research standpoint, we've done a fair number of trials now on known POA biotypes with different resistance profiles, and it's very helpful there. In managing those. And at some level, it's one of the reasons that in Dazaflam, Spectacle here in the U.S., has gained a lot of traction as well, with prodiamine resistance, for example, increasing in Poa annua. To have a new mode of action that can come in that same use pattern and control those weeds is really helpful.
Yeah. We're somewhat lucky with the pre-emergence. We haven't had the prodiamine, the barricade out for a long time, so to speak. We've had pendimethalin, that's probably been the longer one. The old surfland or Rizaline was around the same time as the barricade, but we had spectacle registered now. It's been about, I think, 3 years or so, and the uptake's been good, but it's been a little bit slow because it has had some photo effect on some Bermuda areas and the likes. But I know Bayer have been really working well to educate people on using it correctly, and that was probably one of the things that I think early on in the US people saw that there were differences in use of it and the best ways to use it.
Yeah, no, that's totally right. We definitely saw issues with sandy soils of low organic matter, Bermuda grasses that might be under stress, whether that was from foot traffic or shade or moisture or a combination thereof. It's definitely a herbicide for use on healthy, mature Bermuda grass. I know they moved away from tea applications because often those plants are just going to be more shallow rooted and less mature as well. So, definitely, there's no perfect herbicide out there. They all have their own kind of unique ways to be used most effectively, and Spectacle fits that for sure.
And have you seen, I remember last year in your talk talking about the mixing up the mode of action with the pre-emergent herbicides, not just the post-emergent. Are you seeing that now with around the Tennessee area and on your travels? Are people mixing up, or just they still relying on one mode of action?
I mean, I like to think that at least in Tennessee, the word's out, and we have folks that are diversifying what they're doing a little bit more, and maybe they're just telling me what I want to hear. I don't know, but I definitely, it seems like people are alert, at least with POA, to this being a problem, and I think that grows in large part because it's either been a situation where if you're a golf course superintendent, this has happened to you, or you know someone that it's happened to. And the realities of that become pretty clear pretty quickly when you might be managing an ultra dwarf Bermuda grass putting green, and now you have no post emergence removal option, and that's a scary proposition for many.
Yeah, okay. And there's been started like a POA working group. I call it POA working group, but you can explain a little bit more where there's been funding to work on the POA issue, and it's a collection of a lot of university professors, not obviously just yourself.
Yeah, this is awesome. So it is a United States Department of Agriculture funded project. It's a 5-year project funded to I think $5.7 million is the total amount of funding. There's 15 universities involved, and it's a real noteworthy thing, not just for Poa annua and for weed science, but just for turf in general. It's one of the my understanding is it's the first time that the U.S. Department of Agriculture has funded a turf grass project that does not have some sort of breeding component to it. At least that's what I've been told. So that's really, really big, and for them to focus on a pest management issue is also really big and important. And it's exciting because we're going to not only get a better look at herbicide resistance and how widespread it is and what modes of action are most prevalent, but we're going to see that over a large scale across the entire geography of the continental United States. But also it's going to allow us to do some of the key biological projects about annual bluegrass that often there's not funding to do to really build a sustained management program. For example, one of the studies that I'm most excited about is we will be every location, or I shouldn't say every, several of the locations will be receiving annual bluegrass seed from populations identified all over the country, and then we'll be burying that annual bluegrass seed at different depths in the soil profile, and then removing them over a time course. So we'll get a better understanding of what is annual bluegrass seed viability and how is it affected by burial depth and how long it's in the soil. And that's going to help us with better pre-emergence programs. It's going to help us maybe with better strategies to work on the soil seed bank to prevent resistance moving forward. That's just one of many, many projects. There's another with seedling emergence and trying to better understand annual bluegrass seedling emergence and what environmental parameters are best associated with that. There's another with annual bluegrass flowering, for example, so trying to better understand the environmental conditions that favor flowering. So if you were a superintendent, could you come in and collect clippings during those key windows of opportunity to potentially have a non-chemical way to discourage populations from becoming bigger. And I think in Australia, they have been the leaders in integrated management of resistant weeds in row crops for sure. With everything they do with chaff carts and harvest weed seed control and whatnot. And this is our attempt now in turf to get the data to build those types of programs for what we do here in the turf market.
Is it just going to be, I guess one of the things, will it just be focused on POA, or would there be sort of a somewhat side project that you could utilize some of the information you find for other weeds as well? Is that a possibility? At the same time, or the future?
I think what anyone that's involved in this project would say, it would be that we hope what we can do is build this unbelievably thorough and robust data set for POA that's not only complete from a scientific standpoint, but provides actionable things for the turfgrass manager. And once we start to see kind of, that those efforts bear fruit, then there's an opportunity to maybe go back and see if we could get some more funding to do this on other weed species for sure. And another interesting component to the effort, Nadeem, is there's a focus group that's being held here at GIS this week, and what they're trying to do is pull turfgrass managers in from all across the United States and understand some of the social dynamics about POA annua and POA annua control. What drives a person to purchase a given herbicide or to make that application, or when do they hold off, and trying to understand kind of some of the social components to this. That's something with what we do research-wise is is not often done.
Yeah.
And I know in row crop agriculture, they did this several years ago with listening sessions for U.S. row crop producers, and they were really, really insightful in what was gleaned from that. So it is a very thorough POA project. You can follow it on Twitter. The handle is @ResistPOA, and that is a shared handle amongst all of the 15 universities that are involved.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely be putting a link in there, and if there's obviously anything that I find out from Jim or the other colleagues, I'll putting it out to everyone there, because it's not just a US problem, it's a worldwide problem. POA. And the last thing I want to talk about is everyone's other favorite weed, Bermuda grass cooch.
Yeah.
And we're finding it more and more difficult, people find it more difficult to control in bentgrass greens, bent POA greens. Just the encroachment coming through and really trying to get a handle on it. It's, we're in Australia, essentially we have 2%, or you got 2%. We're using that on. It can be successful, but difficult to get it right. What do guys do here in the US? What do they do?
Well, that product 2% is definitely one that's used a fair amount. Sadly, I think there's probably some off-label applications that go out here targeting Bermuda grass and bentgrass. None of those are ever recommended. Extension-wise, mainly just because the risk is so high. When we think about a putting green, and it's the most high-dollar acreage on the golf course, right? And if something goes awry, that's just never going to be good. So, and unfortunately, one of the things that, because of that situation, is it's very difficult to get something labeled for bentgrass, number one, and it's even more difficult to get a company willing to label it for use on bentgrass putting greens. So we haven't seen a whole lot of new development in terms of new products coming in for that use. So unfortunately, I don't really have anything new to report. There, in some of the other cool season species, the fescues, for example, we had tepramazone come to the market several years ago. That's sold here in U.S. turf as Pilex. That definitely has some activity on Bermuda grass, but would not be anything that you would want to put on a bentgrass putting green at rates that would be active on Bermuda.
I know that's a BASF product, and they have a presence in Australia, but I don't know what their line of development is. Obviously, anyone watching this, go and ask BASF about that one, but I do. I have seen a little bit of that product, Is there anything culturally wise? I remember, I think it was a talk with your colleague last year, talking in regards to paspalum Dallas grass and getting in there and verticutting. Has there been any more work sort of with those with the paspalum Dallas?
Yeah, I don't know that work has advanced. Dr. Ramon Leone, who used to be at the University of Florida, I think he continued some of that with tropical signal grass. I don't know where that work ended up, but I don't think there's been anything more on that with Dallas grass, paspalum dilatatum, unfortunately.
Yeah. Because that's another hard weed.
There's more weed problems than there is time to work on.
No, that's it. Because we've only got DSMA and MSMA left, and that can only be used on, especially DSMA is fairly wide used, but restricted, and you have to have the licensing to be able to use it. But it's not safe. It's safe on Bermuda grass. It's used on greens as well at lower rates, but on kikuyu grass, which we have, it smokes kikuyu grass brilliantly. So it's a good kikuyu grass control. But that's but there isn't anything.
Yeah, there was work done for the past several years with panoxinin, which is Syngenta's new herbicide that I believe is maybe launched last fall. And there's activity there on Dallas grass. You know, our data would say it's probably not a standalone product, but when incorporated into a spot treatment program with a trifloxysulfuron or something along those lines, definitely has some utility.
Great. All right, we better finish it off there. It's like it is coming late in the afternoon. We're going up to about 5:45 here. Jim's just flown in from Tennessee. So, Jim, thank you very much again for sitting down with me, having a chat. And I do appreciate everything. You're always helping me with. And I know some of you guys have always asked me questions. And Jim's one of the guys I definitely call on and go, mate, do you know anything about this? And he's been really good, very helpful. Love to get you out to Australia again. I know you've visited Western Australia with their herbicide work and the crops and the likes. Yeah. But definitely we've got to get you out for the turf conference.
Yeah, I would love to.
One day.
Would love to. And if you follow me on Twitter, I'm at UTTurfWeeds. Certainly, if you have questions, happy to answer those on that platform as well.
Yeah, no, it should be good.
Alrighty.
All right. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.